Welcome to A Wild New Work. This is a place where we listen to the land, to the ancestors, and to the wisdom that still resides within us so that we can bring an old and sturdy strength into the present moment. I'm Megan Leatherman, and I'm your host today. Well, hi, friend. Welcome back. I'm so glad that you're here. I'm so glad to be here with you today. I have missed our conversations here, and I hope this episode today is a blessing to you. You probably noticed we have some new music on the show. This has been a long time coming, and I want to say thank you to my friends Megan and John who helped me to land on a tune that felt authentic to what we're trying to create here. And it makes me so happy every time I hear it, and I hope you feel the same way. This season of the show, over the next 3 months, there will be 3 episodes, one per month, in which I will share a message from the land. And in this series, I will be sharing about the rituals that I am doing at a place called Oak Island, here about 45 minutes outside of Portland, Oregon. And today I want to introduce you to this place, and I want to share my experience there on April 16th and what I believe is meant to come through that experience for you all today. As is often the case, the experience I had was surprising and unexpected and took time to digest and understand, but I think it was exactly what was meant to happen. And I hope that the learnings that I gained from it are useful to you, whether you have a land connection practice or not. I think these are messages that are essential for all humans to hear at this time. Before I dive in, I want to let you know that if this show is meaningful to you and you would like to support me making it, you can become a member of Eagle Creek at awildnewwork.com/Eagle Creek. I also want to let you know that I'm starting another vocational guidance small group. A new cohort is starting on May 14th, and I'll say more about that at the end. I also have what feels like a major life shifting, but very organic and just lovely announcement that I am taking a step toward purchasing land. And it's a little baby step, and I am inviting community into it. So if you are someone who has thought about stewarding land or thought about making village, or someone who dreams up visiting a commons and having a place to forage or gather or do ceremony, or even if you're not in Oregon, but feel called to just support a project like that from afar, I'm going to share more about that at the end as well. With that, let's head into our opening invocation. So if you'd like to, you can take a deep breath. You might notice how the land is holding you today, how the earth is always there to hold you or catch you. May each of us be blessed and emboldened to do the work we're meant to do on this planet. May our work honor our ancestors and their ancient gods, and may it be in harmony with all creatures that we share this earth with. I express gratitude for all of the technologies and gifts that have made this possible, and I'm grateful to the Multnomah, Cowlitz, Bands of Chinook, and Clackamas nations, among many others, who are the original stewards of the land that I'm on. May this episode be one small stitch in the great reweaving of right relationship that so many Indigenous teachers are calling us into. Okay, well, at the outset, I want to just share or remind you that what I say today is a story from my perspective. It's my experience, and when applicable, I have tried to do good research and ensure that what I'm sharing is true or factual or based in something other than just me, although some of it is just me. But take what's useful here and leave anything that's not. I offer this very humbly. I want to start by telling you about Oak Island, which is a magical, troubled, complicated place. And some of you have been there. I know I've been there with you. And I hope that this episode just helps this place come alive for all of you. And I'll share some photos on Instagram if you're on there, and also in my email newsletter so that you can get a sense of what it might look and feel like. Oak Island is not quite an island, but almost an island on one of the largest river islands in the so-called United States. The larger island that Oak Island is part of is known as Wapato Island or Sauvie Island. And I have come to this place probably 1,000 times over the last 12 or more years that I have lived in Portland. And a few years ago, I think 2023, maybe 2022, I had a dream in which I was talking to my friend who's an astrologer, and we were sitting at a table, and there was like a projection of a natal chart. So, like, if you haven't seen one, it's just a circle with all of the different planets on it and different houses and zodiac signs, and it's kind of a snapshot of the sky. And it's often used for people's birth charts to show you where the planets were at the moment you were born. And so we're looking at this natal chart, and up from the bottom of the chart on the right hand side, so like coming up through the fourth or fifth house and curving up around all the way through the eighth house, is a giant sturgeon, a prehistoric fish that still exists today. And this sturgeon, as it swims up through this natal chart, it's pushing all of the planets to the side. It's pushing them around, it's moving them. And there were other aspects of the dream, but that stood out to me. That still feels very resonant and powerful today. And soon after that, not immediately, but maybe a couple of months after that, I was driving on Sauvie Island for, again, the like thousandth time. I got married on Sauvie Island. It's a very, very special place. But I had never noticed this sign at the very beginning of the island that says Sturgeon Lake. And after that dream, I saw this sign and I felt immediately like I have to go there. I have to go. The sturgeon is really, really important in some way. And again, sturgeon, there are multiple kinds. The sturgeon in Sturgeon Lake are called white sturgeon. This fish is 100 million years old. It is considered a living fossil. It has not changed, if at all, like at all or hardly, in the last 100 million years. These fish swim lower down in the rivers. They can get very, very large. They look prehistoric. And in this dream, I think it was pointing to the fact that something very, very old, something that existed long, long before humans and human knowing, was coming up into the world, coming up to cause foundational change, to change the map, the stars, the destiny of that natal chart. Whether it's mine or the natal chart of humanity, I'm not sure. But sturgeon was making themselves known. And when I saw that sign for Sturgeon Lake, I knew I had to go. So I went for the first time around my birthday in 2023, and I fell madly in love. To me, it's one of the most beautiful places on earth. It's an oak savanna, so there are Oregon white oaks plentiful on the island. There are grass fields. It is surrounded by a lot of water, two lakes primarily, Sturgeon Lake and Steelman Lake on the other side. Oak Island is an essential stopping point for migratory birds. It is closed from October to mid-April, and they say it's for waterfowl protection, but it is open for hunting in that time. And I'm not patently against hunting, but I know that most hunting isn't done respectfully. So I always get really annoyed and angry. I have a little flare up every October when they close the land to people who just want to walk there and be there and enjoy the place, but make it available to people who want to shoot ducks and geese and leave their bullet shells all over the ground, which I have to come pick up later. So anyway, is that is that. On the island, the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife must have some arrangement where they lease the land to a local rancher. So there is a herd of cattle that wanders the land, and that can be a little unsettling at first, being around these very large animals, and there's no fences, and you can get quite close to them, and there's manure everywhere. But they are a part of this landscape that is their home. There is a plethora of different kinds of plants that love this open, grassy, oak-filled kind of landscape and along the water. But it is a land that has absolutely been diminished and abused through industrial agriculture. And I think the plants that are there are a unique kind of reaction to that. The most dangerous of those being poison hemlock. There is poison hemlock everywhere on this island, and there are other poisonous plants as well. So that brings an added dimension. The lakes, again, are absolutely beautiful. They are still an important landing place and home to many beautiful birds, but they are also really suffering from industrial runoff and pollution and silt. Sturgeon Lake is suffering from an unnatural buildup of silt. It's not getting the clear water in and out that it needs to be a healthy living lake. It's becoming slowly just sort of a wetland rather than a true lake. And I know people are working on this, but it's really a problem. So it's an absolutely beautiful place. And it feels like the most wild place to me that you can get to from right outside of Portland. But it is also harmed, and there is this sort of layer of darkness that I always feel when I'm coming into the island, especially at the beginning. And I know that other people have felt this as well. There's often clothes that get thrown on the side of the entry road into the place. There's often cars just parked in sort of weird places where it's not like a fishing hole. You're not really sure what's going on. It does feel like a place that you would not want to be in after dark. And none of that should be surprising, really, because of the history and what happened in this place. Oak Island and all of Sauvie Island or Wapato Island was home to the Multnomah peoples, a Chinook-speaking culture who are indigenous to this island. As far as I can tell from research, there were around 15 villages of people who made their home on this island, sustained in large part by the special tuber that grows in the waters there called the Wapato plant, which is used is like a staple part of their diet. These were a canoe people who used canoes to get from place to place on the island, who had, of course, incredibly rich lives in this place. And you feel that when you're there. You feel their palpable presence and history. And I believe the land misses them. I believe the land misses their connection and stewardship and their dancing and singing and counsel. These peoples were written about and encountered by Lewis and Clark on their journey and were subsequently harmed and almost decimated through disease and colonization by European settlers who recognized the fertility and beauty of this land and decided to claim it as theirs and farm it, open dairy farms, use the connection to the Columbia River. And many of these farms and settlers are still operating in some form or another on the island today. The harm that came to those peoples, those villages, and the falling away of their land tending practices and relating practices created a rupture between the people and the land. When I was at Oak Island last summer, I asked one of the trees there, she's sort of an old tree that sits alone, kind of overlooking a lot of the area. And I asked to be shown like what it was like before, what it was like when the Multnomah peoples made their home here, and what happened, and why, what is this darkness I feel? And I won't share everything, but I did get a very clear image that indigenous practices like recognizing that the land is sacred, tending to the land, making a life with the land, those practices create a sort of protective shield over all beings of the land, where there's this like intelligent cellular boundary around the land so that nefarious things can't get in and make a home. But when those peoples were attacked and harmed, and those practices weren't maintained, it's like the cell wall has a break in it. So now viruses and destruction can get in. And that's what I think we're seeing at Oak Island and many other places where terrible things like this have happened and the land has become a place that's been abused. Is not only is there agricultural farming and pollution, but there's something else going on where they can be beautiful places, but there's just this darkness. And I don't know if it's like human trafficking or just a lot of harm has happened to people on that land. I don't know what is going on. I've tried to file police reports because I'm just like, why am I filling another bag of clothes, women's clothes, and I'm freaked out and something is not right here. But yeah, that shield of protection over the people and over the land has been broken and needs to be repaired. And the infections that come as a result also need to be cast out or repaired. So those are some of the dynamics that we're stepping into in this series and in these rituals of trying to listen to this very complicated and beautiful place. So I've been out to Oak Island many times. I've done ritual myself there many times. I've done ritual with some of you there. And I wanted to go as soon as the place opened to people again and start doing ritual for this, not for the show, but for the community. And it's this podcast is a way that I share that to with the community. So I'm not sharing these rituals just to like report back. My hope is that when you hear a little bit about what I do and what works or doesn't work, in this case, really what doesn't work, my hope is that it gives you ideas about how you might like to connect to the land in ways that feel authentic to you and that feel true to the heritage that you carry, no matter what it is. So I offer it as a sort of learning tool. And again, take what's useful here and leave anything that's not. If you didn't listen to the last series on the ocean listening rituals, I encourage you to go back if you would like to. But essentially, I'll just say that a ritual is a set container that you step into and out of, and inside the ritual, something happens. Whether it's a personal transformation or receiving a message or putting something down or giving life to something new, a ritual is something that you decide is going to happen, and there are practices that you create to essentially make your actions sacred and make transformation possible. So I do all kinds of different things to prepare for a ritual. It depends a little bit on what the ritual is. For this one, I made sure I was meditating regularly and asking my guides what I needed to know and bring. I packed all my offerings and packed everything I would need. I made sure I had plenty of time to be out there. I also brought my staff, which I didn't talk about in the ocean series, but I did take it. And this is a ritual staff that I am getting to know and that came to me in a very magical way. The staff is a really consistent, important tool in European paganism history and heathen practices, and in a specific path in particular called Seidr, Seidr, that is rooted in the Norse and Germanic traditions that I am descended from and study. So this staff is becoming very important and is becoming a like way that I can hear the land better, and I knew that it needed to come with me for this ritual. I was feeling really like unfocused and kind of out of it in the day leading up to the ritual and the morning of. I just felt like I could not really get clear about what I was doing. I was feeling a little nervous. I hadn't been out to Oak Island, since September. And again, there's this like layer of ickiness there. So I was having some fear about being at the most remote part of the island alone. And I was, a little nervous. Like, what if I go and I don't hear anything? Like, what am I going to say? All my ego definitely gets loud leading up to these kinds of rituals. Yeah, I just didn't really feel like very clear or like I could drop in very well. But I went and I pulled in, and there was a ton of water on the road leading up. It had been raining fairly heavily. There were more people than usual there since it was the first day of being open to the public. And like I said, there's this resident herd that roams on Oak Island. But when I was pulling in and parking, there were a bunch of trucks with cattle trailers driving out, and they had juvenile cows in their trailers. So that immediately felt shitty. Like, they were parked down at this big barn that you can see down the road. And I don't know for sure, assume that the calving is done for the year and these calves were being sold to others and taken from their home and from their mothers. So that was disturbing. And I just was like, well, this is interesting. I don't like this. You know, it was like bleh, more bleh. But I got out of my car, settled in a little, got my stuff, and said hello to the land. And I began to walk. And the plants are in their fullness. There's, of course, oak leafing out, maple leafing out, all the birds, so many different kinds of birds. I usually see eagles when I pull in or soon after, but I only saw a nesting osprey on the way in, which are also incredible, beautiful birds. The poison hemlock again was growing like crazy, and you can recognize it. There's different kinds. The one that is prominent on Oak Island is the European variety that has purple splotching on their stalks, and it kind of looks like a large carrot green. Basically, if you do any kind of foraging in this area, at least don't eat anything that looks like a carrot top, unless you're like really sure what it is. The hemlock was not flowering yet, but it's all over the island and it's greenery. And yes, this is the plant that the state of Greece used in executions, like the one for Socrates. A small amount, when ingested, can absolutely kill you. And as far as I know, there is still no antidote. It sounds like an absolutely brutal death, full of hallucinations and your nerves slowly stopping working. They don't like the nerves around your lungs will just stop working and you will suffocate, sometimes after hours. Small amounts of this plant have been used in the so-called witches' flying ointments, which are like a salve that could be used to quote unquote take flight or help the spirit to leave the body. And I don't think it's an accident that hemlock is growing at Oak Island. Kobe Michael of the Poisoner's Apothecary wrote of poison hemlock: it is a plant of borders, wastelands, and in between areas, a typical characteristic of plants used in spirit flight. So, Oak Island could absolutely be considered an in between place, a place of borders between lakes, between lands, and also a wasteland of a type. It's absolutely been overgrazed by the cattle there. The lakes are not in their fullness of clarity of water, of freshness, and I'm not surprised that hemlock is there. And not that I know every place in this area, but I have never seen this plant. If I have, I've missed it. I have not seen this plant in other places, and I've never seen it in such vast quantities. I have two friends who have been to Oak Island and have found fully intact cow carcasses on the island, and I wonder if they have died from accidentally eating hemlock or perhaps from eating too much of another poisonous plant there, which is called common ragwort or tansy ragwort. That's poisonous to many animals as well. There's also a lot of hawthorn on Oak Island, which is a tree or can be more like a shrub sometimes, but in this case, they're trees that are very, very important in perhaps other traditions as well, but especially in European traditions, thought to be a portal between this world and the other world, are very important trees to fairies. The hawthorn flowers and berries are important medicine for the heart, and they are covered in thorns. And I think those thorns are really important and part of their role at Oak Island. There's also a ton of blackberry, which, of course, is covered in thorns and has a sharpness. And I read once that blackberry is like a scab that covers over a harm done to land or a disturbance, a wounding. It's like the land is growing this and saying, like, don't touch here, or this part of me is healing. So themes of poison, protection, defenses were immediately present as I began walking, and I think that will come up later. Of course, there was also so much beauty. The sun was out. I was happy to be there. It's quiet. There's birds everywhere. I stopped in my favorite meadow. After the meadow, I stopped by Sturgeon Lake, where there are still white sturgeon living among other fish. I don't know how well everyone is doing, but it looked, it's still a beautiful, vast lake. It took me about an hour to walk to my ritual spot where I knew I needed to be. And I was just, as I was walking, just trying to be present and kind of get oriented again. I was letting everyone know I was there, that I was so happy to see them. How was their winter? I missed you. And I eventually came to my spot, and it's off the trail. It's a place where I've done ritual before. And I was kind of looking for the best way in. And right as I'm looking out to where I'm headed, I see an eagle fly overhead, as if to say, it's here. Your spot is here. You made it. So I got to my spot, and there were clouds coming in. It was starting to get darker and colder. I arrived in my place with inside a small grove of trees right next to a small seasonal lake, and I set myself up. I again introduced myself. I made my offerings. I made smoke. I created my circle. And as I'm doing this, I kept hearing these big splashes in the lake, like something falling in or diving in, but I couldn't see anyone. And there are otters there, but I didn't see any otters. There were these huge white egrets across the way, very beautiful, but it wasn't them. I heard frogs, but the splashing I heard was bigger than a frog. And eventually, as I just watched for a while, I saw that there were these multiple largemouth bass jumping out to catch bugs. And that was what I was hearing. So there was a lot of activity all around. The land was very alive and active. And I came to a still point and sat down, and I was ready to listen. And I told the land that, I talk to other people about the land. I'm trying to act as a channel or intermediary for the land. And so, if there's anything that you would like me or others to know today, please show me or tell me. And it was hard to tune in. Again, it was like there was a lot of activity, but I also just felt kind of out of it. Like something was not quite clicking. And all I experienced was I had this awareness of sort of like my consciousness going a few inches into the soil and feeling a sense of harmony. It was like I was feeling the whole symphony of creatures in that place, on that island, in that moment. And not just any harmony, but a harmony that really made sense and was peaceful, that wasn't locked into stories from the past, but was life, making life in that moment in the best way that it could. And my mind was kind of like, no, but you're all suffering. The lake is full of silt and the birds are hurting. And, this, we're at the end. But really what I felt was just immense, deep harmony, peace with what is and who was there and how they were there. And that was it. That's what I saw and felt, which is a beautiful gift. But it wasn't the sort of potency of clarity and communication that I have experienced before, that I know is possible, where you sort of feel like a knowing or a message come up literally from the earth into your body or down from a tree. But I just tried to accept that maybe the land was quiet that day, or maybe I was a little off. Maybe I was meant to just be present with the beings there and feel into that harmony. Remember myself as a part of that harmony and remind you of yourself as a part of that harmony. So I tried to just be grateful and I said thank you. And I also felt like it was okay to share my prayers as well with the land, my prayers for all of you listening, for myself, and for this dream of stewarding land together in Silver Creek Canyon. So I finished my prayers, and then two people started walking up to my right, not super close by, but the island is so big, and there's never that many people that I was immediately put off and annoyed. They were just there to photograph birds, which is wonderful, but I just don't like when anyone like gets close during my rituals, and it's not very common. There's usually this like cloak of invisibility that I experience. But they came up, and then right after that, there was this distressing call from a cow nearby, which was also unsettling. So it just felt like time to go. Like, okay, that's what it was, time to wrap up. And so I did. Then I began walking the rest of the loop, heading back, and it started to rain, and it started to rain hard. So I stopped under a tree, put my stuff down. I put on my poncho. I put my staff aside, leaning on a tree, got all my stuff, and then got going again. And I took some photos. I recorded a huge flock of geese that was really beautiful. And I was enjoying myself still, but also just feeling like I didn't really hear the land clearly that day. There wasn't like a potency that there had been at the ocean or at other times. And I realized like, yeah, just something felt off, and I wondered if I needed to learn to speak with the beings there in a new or updated language, that there were maybe some tweaks that needed to be made so that I could hear them and they could hear me and we could be in conversation. But yeah, something just felt kind of off. And I made it to my car about an hour after my ritual, and I realized that I did not have my staff. I was just like, fuck. It was an hour walk back. I had to leave to pick my kids up from school. I did not have time to go get it. This staff is really important to me. It is part of a new learning I'm doing in my ancestral spiritual practice. I felt responsible for it. I could not believe I had forgotten it. I never forget things. This does not happen. And I had no choice but to leave it there. So, with that happening, plus not feeling like I got a clear message that day, I left feeling pretty deflated, like I had done something wrong. How could I forget my staff? What was I, meant to experience that day? What learning was going to come from this? It just felt really crunchy. And I didn't love that feeling, but I knew that that was part of the medicine. Like whatever happens in a ritual is what's meant to happen, is what you work with. And I knew that, but of course, I'm allowed to feel how I feel about it. And it was a really emotionally tumultuous next 12 hours or so. I slept fitfully. I had a dream about my staff. I woke up grumpy. And I checked in the next day and felt my ancestors say that it was actually okay that the staff was there, that I didn't need to go get it that day. And I wasn't exactly clear why it got left. Was there some kind of trickster energy at play? I've had other weird stuff happen on the island that just felt like someone was kind of fucking with you. Perhaps my staff wanted to stay there. I wasn't really clear, and I still have not gotten it as I'm recording. And I will have to let you know in the next episode if it's still there. I really pray that it's there and safe and that I can find it again. So that was the ritual. That's what happened on April 16th. And I want to talk a little bit about the sense I have made from it since then and the inquiries I've made and the learning that I think is here for us today. So I needed to do some meditations and writing about, and also journeying about this experience, this very humbling ritual that didn't seem to work. And what I have learned since that day is that I neglected a foundational piece of etiquette in land connection practice, and that the land was responding to that lack of etiquette. In indigenous cultures the world over, and in the Germanic Norse tradition that I study in particular, there are all kinds of stories and names for the beings on the land, but also the land itself, and the fact that in its entirety, all beings on the land and the land itself are comprised of spirits, land spirits. In my tradition, they're called Landvatir. I've also heard them referred to as old land spirits. There are all kinds of different names. And so when we visit a lake, let's say Sturgeon Lake is not just a lake filled with water, there is a spirit to that lake. The lake has a spirit, just like you have a spirit. When we visit a forest, it's not just a forest, but there is also the spirit of the forest. And these land spirits are not gods, although I think the earth gives birth to gods in some cases. But the land spirits we're talking about today are not gods. They're not people, although in some traditions the ancestors become the spirits of the land. I think that does happen. But these are powerful, aware protectors of that place and of the beings there. Every part of this planet is held by spirits of the land. And we know that they're there because we feel them and can be shown who they are. The old land spirits, in my experience, and some of what I was taught and what I'm learning about, is that they will sort of be inhabited, or they will inhabit a particular rock or tree or mountain, and that there are, again, land spirits of all kinds and of all sizes, like in terms of their reach or their energetic power. But there are these larger guardian spirits that are sort of holding the whole place. And it's not like a hierarchy, but it's just kind of a web. And so you can locate an old land spirit, the guardian of that place, by asking that they show you where they are if they want to. It could be an area of the ground, again, a great stone, a tree, a body of water. They will inhabit a place and can make themselves known to you if they want to, and you will know them by their energy. They are aware of everything that happens in and on their land. And depending on what has happened between humans and the spirits of a place, that relationship can be broken or in disrepair, or it can be thriving. In many places, the people have forgotten or have been forced to let go of the practices that maintained this good relationship. And this wasn't like just an oopsie thing that happened. These were practices that were intentionally attacked through the process of Christianization and capitalism and colonization, that it literally became illegal or dangerous to pray to the spirits of the land, to make offerings to them, to sing to them, to even acknowledge them in any way. You could be labeled as a devil worshiper or a witch or yeah, and you could die because of those practices. All around the world, there are stories like this of indigenous practices being attacked and demonized. But when that relationship between humans and the land spirits is healthy, humans and the land can thrive together. But when that relationship is broken, humans forget their place, they cause harm to the land. And again, that sort of intelligent cellular membrane of protection gets broken and things can get in. And the land responds to try and protect itself and rebalance things. So now there's poisonous plants growing everywhere, or there's storms, or there's destructive fire. The land is alive. The spirits of that land are responding to what is happening. And you might notice this by considering how different places feel. Again, even beautiful places like Oak Island can feel unsafe or unwell in some way, or beautiful places that you know are beautiful. You can see everything growing. Look at all those flowers and trees, or look at those, beautiful creatures. But something about it feels dead, like it's literally alive, but spiritually unavailable or even hostile. And I know all of this. Like, I studied this, I practiced this. This is like my life's calling. I have talked to the land since I was a little girl. I know how important it is to honor the spirits of the place, but I forgot on this day. And I wonder if you have ever had that experience of forgetting something really, really important. And it almost feels like fateful. Like, I mean, it could have just been that I was a jerk and I just forgot and I have too much on my plate. But it almost felt like I was put into a trance or something, like I was meant to forget, like I needed to be reminded or have this experience. And I think that does happen sometimes where we forget something essential and the universe or the land just kind of smacks us on the head to say, like, remember. Remember, this is really important. This isn't like rote stuff that you just don't go through the motions with this. This is alive. This is an alive relationship. So in my practice, I like to do regular sort of journeys, which are different than meditations, but similar, where you go inside and you can journey in your spirit or in your imagination or whatever word fits for you, but your soul can sort of journey to a place and you can do things and do magic there and tend and heal. And so I journeyed to meet the old land spirit at Oak Island and apologize. I said, I am so sorry that I did not come to you first, that I didn't ask you what you wanted for offerings. I didn't come and ask you for permission to be there to do this project. My ancestors told me to come, but I did not check in with you. I did not awaken you or knock on your door with song. I just waltzed in and expected a big message, a whole big gift, and I did not remember my manners. And in my journey, this great spirit confirmed that they were not available to speak to me that day, except in the regular ways that nature is always there for us to learn from, and that they kept my staff there. They took it to get my attention. And they told me what they want next time for my blot or my offering. And they told me how to do better when I go out again. They also said that people, myself included, need to do better, need to try harder. And not in a vicious way, but the way someone whose boundaries are constantly run over would ask for. This land, this old land spirit has been dealing with colonization, farming, harmful farming, pollution, cattle overgrazing and then being stolen from their home. They're dealing with whatever else is going on in that place. They're seeing all of it and feeling it. The beings there are feeling it. It's seeping into the soil. And this spirit said, even people who come to enjoy this place, I love you, but you need to do better. So I am very humbled, and I hope that this lesson helps you to remember that the land is ensouled. The land has soul. The land spirits are aware of who is there. They are aware of what's happening, and that the land is full of beings and spirits who deserve our respect. So, if we want to take part in the repair that's needed between humans and the land, then we can talk to the old land spirits. We can acknowledge their presence. We may not know how exactly or where they are. It might feel kind of weird, but even just acknowledging that they are there can be enough to make a little stitch. We can bring offerings that the land would enjoy and appreciate, things that we have made, things that are meaningful or beautiful, that are easy for the earth to digest. And we can stay very humble and listen for the wisdom that is always flowing through the land, but listening for the wisdom that perhaps the spirits of the land want to share with us that day. I don't believe that even though we are making all these blunders, and even though so many people are actively harming the land, I don't believe that we are too far gone. I believe that this knowing still lives in you. I know that your ancestors, even though it may have been long, long ago, your ancestors knew the spirits of the land. They knew how to come to a place and say, hello, we're here in a good way. We respect your presence. We want to have a good relationship with you. Show us, where is it okay to build or hunt or forage? Where would you like us? What do you need? The way you would in any kind of healthy relationship. And your ancestors had their own cosmologies about them, their own words and conceptions of who these spirits were. And while a lot of that has been lost to those of us living today, you can keep inquiring. You can keep learning. You can ask your ancestors to show you, what did they call the land spirits? How did they relate to them? What offerings did they make? You can ask the land to show you and see what happens. And in this way, we can do better. And I'm going to do better when I'm out there again in a couple of days. I hope this time today has felt supportive to you. I'm excited to share what happens in my next trip out there. I will let you know if the land gives me my staff back or if I have lost it permanently, which would be another big lesson. So, yeah, stay tuned. And I want to tell you about Meant for More and this next step I'm taking toward land stewardship, which I better do better, and I will. First, I want to say a big thank you to Eagle Creek members for supporting me and this show financially. I encourage you to contribute if this podcast is meaningful to you. I also really appreciate your shares, your reviews on Apple Podcasts, and your messages about how the podcast helps you. I always love being in conversation with all of you who are listening. Like I said, Meant for More, which is my vocational guidance small group, begins on May 14th. And this is a 5-month container. We meet for 8 weeks to start and then once a month over 3 months. And it's for people who know they need some kind of meaningful shift in their working life and journey. And it works. We focus on resourcing you very deeply with ancient practices like ancestral reconnection and tracking and ritual so that you have actual skills that really, really work, and so that something actually new and different and profound and powerful and aligned can come through in your working life. And we focus on that really rich meeting between your calling and the gifts that you were born with, that you're here to offer the world, where that meets your very real constraints and your material needs. And both of those have to be honored. Who you deeply are and what you're here to bring into the world, and also the fact that we live inside of capitalism and you have bills to pay. And there's a place where those meet, that is, where there's tension, but also real beauty and creativity. So, if that feels or sounds inspiring to you, there are a few spots left for the cohort that begins on May 14th, and you can learn more about that at awildnewwork.com/guidance, and I'll put that link in the show notes. In terms of this next step toward land, I'm really excited. This has been 10 or more years in the making, and I can't believe there's actually something happening. Um, but essentially, I have a Kickstarter open, and I'm raising funds to cover the cost of a feasibility study of a piece of property just outside of Silverton, Oregon, which is about an hour south of Portland. It's 440 acres of land that has not been developed, that is quite wild. And there's a river running through it. It's an absolutely enchanting, beautiful place. And I, for over a year now, have been asking the land to show me if there is a place that would like human stewards to come and make village. And I believe that this is the place, that this is the land that is ready for loving people who listen and who are willing to live in alignment with the land and what the land desires, and calling for people who will honor the old land spirits there. So everyone who contributes to this Kickstarter will be, yeah, essentially part of this next step. And the feasibility study will be done by a really wonderful real estate broker and person who super gets it. His name is Nat Andrani, and he would take a few weeks or more to do a site visit and to do a high level but quite in-depth study of the zoning constraints of this place, what's possible, what could be built and where, how many people could the land actually support, all kinds of really good information that would give us a sense of whether or not this is a feasible place, and what would it take to then begin to raise funds and financing to purchase it. So if that is something you would like to be part of, if you would like to see the final results of the feasibility study, if you would like to be invited into this project, into this dream, you can learn more at the link in the show notes or at awildnewwork.com/land. And I welcome your contributions. I ask for them. I say thank you for them. My family and I don't have, 9,000 or more dollars to cover this on our own, but I also don't want to do this alone. This has never been a dream that is just for me and my little nuclear family. I also want to say that I don't believe land should be bought and sold. I don't believe land is a commodity. Again, I believe the land is absolutely sacred and is not something that should be purchased, or I don't believe in private property, but that is what we're dealing with here. And I dream of this becoming a kind of modern commons that many people would care for and live with and be blessed by. And I know it's land that is vulnerable to logging and development. And I believe this land is calling for people like us who want to live simply and in alignment with the land. So I hope you'll check it out. the Kickstarter is open and ready for your funds, and I'll keep you all posted about how that unfolds. Okay, my friend, I hope this was helpful today. Many blessings to you. We will be back in about a month to talk about the next ritual and what the old land spirits there at Oak Island have to say or help me to understand and bring. And I will see you on the other side.